Welcome back, you guys. So this week we're going to do this full landscape here. And to get started, let's just do a little thumbnail version to practice getting our colors right and our values. So I'm just lightly sketching in a couple layers of mountains. And placing some bushes and some trees. Now, to start with, we want to mix kind of a pinkish orange purple. So I've got rose madder and Chinese orange, and I'm pulling in some French ultramarine and making a warm sort of purple sky. So I'm just testing out my values first and trying to get a little more pink and orange in there. So I'm pulling this more purplish color across and leaving some gaps where I'm just going to put in a little extra pink. And that looked a little too dull, so I'm going to give it a little glaze with some extra rose and orange. And that looks a little closer to what I want. And then the second half, I'm just going to pull down some yellow ochre, and that will be the first layer, and then we want to dry after that. So now that I'm fully dry, I got to mix up some grayed down purple for the mountains in the background, and I'm mixing the rose and the French ultramarine to make purple, and then you just add a touch of yellow to gray it down. And this is a faraway color, so it needs to be more on the blue side to make it cooler and push it back. And then the first one needs to be pretty light. So I'm just trying to mix different amounts of water in to get different values. And adjusting my color temperature, getting more blue. So this first background mountain is the lightest one, and I just start with a little bit of color and then pull the rest down with water. And then you gotta fully dry it before you put on this second row of mountains, and this one is just a touch darker than the last value. And then the third row is even darker than that. So that same gray purple mix, I'm kind of slicing into the land back there, making those little stripes where you can see little rows of land in the distance. Now I got to mix up some greens. We're going to go back and forth between yellow and green here. So I just tried out some turquoise mixed with my yellow, and then I add a little bit of rose so that it's not such a bright green, and that's a pretty good faraway green. So I can use that in between the yellow ochre and just kind of putting these lines across to look like different rows of grass. And I'm not doing things in perfect stripes. We're always keeping variation in the size and the shape of our marks. So I put the stripes a little darker and thicker as it gets closer to me to give it a sense of distance. And this closer green mix, that has the yellow and the French ultramarine to make it a little bit darker. And then I put a thicker row of yellow right at the very bottom, and then I'm going to just dash water drops back into it. So I clean off my brush and with just some water, tap those little drops back into there. And that will give it a sense of texture. So now we gotta do our Faraway Trees. So the French ultramarine and the yellow will make that nice dark green color. And if you want to make it even darker, just add more red. So with a mostly dry brush, I'll drain out the water from the base and then just lightly scratch in little faraway bushes and trees. And when I need the darker green, I have that little bit of red mix to go into it. So you're just scraping little bushes going all the way across. And now for the tree, I'll start with the lighter mix with a little bit more yellow in it and just lightly scratching the paper with the side of the hairs. I'll kind of put this little tree in, that way it doesn't get too heavy. You gotta make sure you got lots of little air holes in there. Then a little bit darker mix I put in a trunk. And then the shadow. So now start the big one. So we gotta pull down this pinky purple wash. And trying to get it wet enough so that I got that bead forming to help pull everything down. A nice smooth wash. And when I get to that horizon, the mountain line, then I want to start switching to the yellow ochre. And I just pull that yellow mix all the way down. And I wasn't on quite enough of a tilt here, so I just pulled my board up to help it move a little faster. Starting to get some puddles forming in there. Alright, so now we got that smoothed out, let it dry, and time to put in the mountains. So I just put that top layer of color and then I start switching to water so that I get a nice graded wash. And let it go to nothing. So you want to have a bit of that pink glowing through so it looks like you got some fog or mist. And dry that completely before you put this next layer. And you can give it some haze at the bottom as well. So dry completely, and then you can start the darker one. Alright, so I got that all smoothed out, and then I just wanted to add a little bit of pink into this little corner here. Warm that little spot back up a bit. And once I get that nice little bit of warm pink back in there, then I'll put those slices of soft purple land with the little rolling hills in the background. Yeah, but first on this one, I'm gonna carry the rest of this wash down, putting in the rows of the greens and the yellows. So trying to get some good variation in between. And I'll get that stronger yellow in the foreground. But I'm using the yellow ochre here just because it gives kind of a softer look. And now I'm just dashing little droplets of water back into there. And for this part, I pulled out the thing from underneath my board so I'm flat. When you're flat, you get these blossoms that spread out in all directions instead of just dripping down. And try to connect them so they're not too polka dotty looking. And it seemed a little too mushy to me over on that side, so I just a bit more green back into there. And kind of rolled it back and forth to let it mix a little bit on the page, kind of let it do its thing. And now I'm just going to let it form. Alright, so I have dried it and then just kind of spritzed this little back area so that I can put those little purple rose in there while it is a bit moist so I don't get really hard edges. And now just kind of scraping some little baby trees. And now these ones, the back ones were purple, and now I'm switching to the darker green mix. And they just get a little bigger and a little darker as they get closer. And here I'm just scraping this little row of bushes that goes across the field. So I just kind of use these to give this a sense of balance and place them around. You don't necessarily have to follow exactly by the photo. And for my big tree, scraping in the lighter color first. And I'm not too dry of a brush because this one's a little bit bigger than my little practice sketch, so I need to have it a little bit more connected. So it's a little bit more water in the brush, but still dry enough to break up and give me those really soft, fluffy outer edges. Then we put in a trunk and some shadows, and then that's about it. So thank you guys for joining me again, and I will see you back next week.